Hey Queens, it's your girl Tiana Elise, and welcome to the Holy It Girl podcast, where I help you integrate biblical principles into your daily lives. Today we're talking about becoming unrecognizable this year through Jesus Christ. And specifically, we're going to be paying attention to when Jesus gives someone a name change. And the reason I even thought about talking about this today was because I was reflecting back on my life, like since I've came to Jesus, because it's a new year. And I realized that I have truly become unrecognizable. And I didn't even realize it. It's like I understood that I've made a lot of changes through Christ, but I don't think I really took a second to think about how far I came, like how much He really brought me through, how I am a completely different person. What made me reflect on this is I was telling someone about where I was from. I'm from Baltimore. And I'm not even going to go deep into it, but they didn't believe that I was truly from there because of how I talked, because of everything. And I let the person know, like, my speech changed because I want to be a speaker, and that's something that God is calling me to be. So my speech is something that He's constantly worked on me with, so I could be ready for my calling. But I really just sat and thought about it. And when I think about who I was like 4 or 5 years ago, honestly, I found God about 3 to 4 years ago. So when I think about who I was 3 to 4 years ago, I realized I'm a completely different person. Even my friends say it sometimes, like the ones that knew me when I first came to college, they are surprised by my transformation. And I used to be the type of person that just said whatever was on my mind. Like, you want to hear my opinion. I was aggressive. I was, girl, I was ghetto, girl. I was ghetto. I was. But I realized God really transformed me through the years. And then I even started to realize that He was working on me before I even knew who He was. And He knew who I was before all of this. Because when I think about even in high school, when I first got to high school, I was always kind of like, I guess, like a popular loner in a sense. Like, I always knew a lot of people, but I kind of still hung to myself. And so once I got to high school, I actually had this friend group. And, they were, party girls, loud and all that. So they kind of adopted me in a sense. And they were social butterflies. So they were really in the mix. So because I was close to them, I kind of would be in the mix too. But in high school, I always went to a different school because I went to a performing arts school, which means I wasn't in public school with them, but on the weekends and after school, I would hang with them around that crowd. And so being friends with them actually brought me out of my shell because I was someone who was really like timid and like I would have fun, but I kind of kept to myself at the same time. I realized God used that friendship to bring me out of my shell because He knew I was going to become this today. And He knew that I was going to need to become more outspoken. And so being with that friend group allowed me to become more outspoken. But then in college, He had to kind of tame it a little bit because then I became really outspoken. And through those friendships, He cultivated my speech. I got better with writing, speaking. I took speaking classes in college. I did Models Inc. So that's when I really started getting into the modeling world, and I started to get that go-getter spirit through that experience. So I just realized how He was molding me even before I knew Him. But then once I got to know Jesus, He completely changed my life. Now it started becoming about the internal shift to be ready for what I wanted to come into fruition. Just with this new year, I've been reflecting back and I'm like, I am not the same person. Like, I didn't even used to talk like this, y'all. Like, if y'all know, I was just let's just get into what we're gonna talk about. So I was reading the book of John, and so that's what we're gonna start today. So let me turn to it. Y'all, please excuse my Bible because it is like falling apart. Like, oh my gosh, like I want to get another one, but I just feel like this is my second one, and these things aren't cheap. They're like $50, and I just feel like I'm trying to put off getting another one, but it's about that time because poor baby, she coming out the seams. If you go to John 1, verse 42, this is the point where Jesus is now meeting His disciples. As we know, He always knew them because He is God, but this is when they are finally getting to meet Him. And so verse 42 says, then Andrew brought Simon to meet Jesus. Looking intently at Simon, Jesus said, your name is Simon, son of John, but you will be called Cephas, which means Peter. When Peter first gave Jesus his yes, I don't think he truly understood the journey that God was about to bring him on. Jesus is giving him a name change. He's speaking to the version of Simon, now Peter, of who he's going to become. Because Jesus sees the end. He sees the beginning, he sees the middle, he sees the end. He sees the future of who you are capable of becoming. And I feel like I can relate to Peter in that sense, where when I first gave Jesus my yes, I was thinking like, I want to be on a big screen. I wanted to walk in New York Fashion Week, because if you know my story, and maybe I'll share my testimony one day, but after college I took a leap of faith and moved to New York. And I'm thinking I'm being New York Fashion Week and all this stuff. And I was in New York Fashion Week, but it didn't happen quite like I thought it was. It was a lot of suffering in the process. And even now, there's still a lot of trials that come with following Jesus. But when I gave Jesus my yes, and he's telling me of who I'm going to become, I had no idea of the internal shift that was going to need to take place. So I realized when we meet God for the first time, he prophesies over our life. He speaks to the version of us that he sees us becoming, rooted in him. That once we find our identity within him, he sees all that we will be capable of. So when God gives you a word, when God gives you a promise, the question now should become, who do I need to become in order for this prophecy to be fulfilled? What patterns do I need to let go of? What changes do I need to make in my life? What habits are no longer serving me? What self-limiting beliefs can no longer come with me? What shifts do I need to make? Stop playing it small and step into the fullness of who God has called you to be. Join the Holy It Girl Society, a transformative mentorship program designed to help women like you navigate the challenging but beautiful process of building a relationship with God and stepping fully and boldly into purpose. If you struggle with consistency when it comes to hitting your goals, struggle with imposter syndrome, low self-esteem, you're tired of stagnancy in your life, you're struggling in your waiting season, whether it's for your husband, whether it's for a job opportunity, whether it's for financial freedom, whatever it is, this is the community for you. We are taking a holistic approach to your growth. We are going to be talking about things such as healing from past hurts, being a better steward of your finances, breaking free from self-limiting beliefs and mindsets that are keeping you stagnant, setting goals and how can you actually obtain those goals, understanding the season you're in and navigating that season successfully. We are going to talk about it all. Link is below if y'all want to learn more and join, but I'll let y'all get back to the video. See you later, queens. Bye. Within me, when I'm just thinking about this journey that God called me on, there were so many shifts. I had to make a shift when it comes to my communication styles and how I dealt with people, because as if you watch the last podcast episode, you'll know that I had abandonment trauma. So just disposing of people, God blesses us through people. You need people in order to get to where you're going. In the Bible, you don't see anyone doing everything on their own. Even Jesus had disciples as witnesses, so when he was gone, they could carry on the good news. So usually when God is calling you to build something, or when he is calling you towards a purpose or a mission, there's people involved. And so God had to develop things within me and my character to be better at dealing with his people, like conflict resolution, communication, forgiveness, not allowing bitterness to seep in, because as a leader, I can't allow revenge to take the lead. So there was so much that I had to shift. There was so much internally that had to be done. But when I gave Jesus my yes, I wasn't even aware of the shifts and the changes within my mindset and the changes within my heart posture that would need to be done. I was only thinking about being in the limelight on stage, and I was in for a rude awakening, okay? Well, a beautiful awakening. Sometimes we can get frustrated with the journey, right? Even when we look back at 2024, I don't know about y'all, but it was a lot of ups and downs. But what I'm learning is God can only pour out a miracle where we have expanded our capacity. He cannot pour a miracle into something that we haven't prepared our capacity for. So the trials, the tribulations, they stretch you to your capacity. And honestly, on New Year's, our pastor, or I went to a church and the pastor was just talking about this, because your promise is heavy. Your promise, there's a lot of weight, a lot of responsibility that comes with your promise, and you have to have the capacity to carry it. But once again, when we give Jesus our yes, he doesn't usually tell us the entire journey. He tells us what we need to know when we need to know it. The process is so necessary, because if God gave you this version of you, the thing that you're praying for right now, you will completely ruin it. So if you want to become unrecognizable, instead of focusing so much on when is this promise going to happen, when is the man going to come, when is the financial situation going to change, when am I going to get that job offer, when is the business going to take off, whatever it is, instead of focusing on that, focus on who do I need to become in order to be ready for the things that I'm waiting for God for. Do you need to be a better steward of your finances? Do you need to go to therapy? Do you need to start working on consistency? Do you need to start waking up earlier? Do you need to make a plan for 2025 because you usually just go through the year winging it? So there's no clear vision, because without vision, or let's put it like this, when you are putting a destination into the GPS, it tells you where to go. You need clear vision on where you're trying to go in order to make a plan for the direction you're trying to go. But when there's no clear vision, if there was no destination, the GPS cannot tell you where to go. And so a lot of us are going through life without a clear plan. Proverbs talks about hard work and good planning lead to prosperity, and hasty shortcuts lead to poverty. It's so important to plan. Yes, God got his own plan, and sometimes the plans are going to change, but plan to the best of your ability and invite him into your plans. You should be consulting God anyway when it comes to the things you're planning for. But this is how you become unrecognizable, by focusing on the internal shifts that God is trying to work within you. I know sometimes we want the thing, but in order for you to get the thing, you need to make the changes. And some of us are slowing down our progress. Some of us are remaining stagnant because we haven't made the internal shifts necessary in order to get the thing. We just keep complaining that God has not given us the thing, but you're not ready for it yet. And so if you want to become unrecognizable, the best thing you can do is get in relationship with God, get in deep relationship with God, seek his word every day. In the book of Joshua, chapter 1, he tells Joshua to meditate on his word day and night. Every morning, every night, you should be reading the word of God. You should be seeking his face. Because the thing about God is, he is going to show you things about yourself that you didn't even know needed change. One of my favorite prayers to pray to God is, Lord, show me my blind spots. Be ready for that prayer too, because God has shown me so many things about myself that I didn't even see. That's what I mean by blind spots. Things about myself that are holding me back that I didn't even notice. When I tell you, it gets deep down to learning about my attachment styles, learning about, like, I've learned so much about myself, even down to organizational things. And God has revealed so much to me about myself. And I think sometimes we are so much in a hurry to get to the destination, but we need to start learning to fall in love with the process, because God is a God of processes. God loves a process. And what I also realize is God will only reveal to the level of your spiritual maturity. I'll say that again. God will only reveal things to you to the level of your spiritual maturity. And the way that you become more spiritually mature is through building a relationship with him. You see this all through scripture. Even when we just think about the Old Testament and the New Testament, when we have the Old Testament, when God led his people out of slavery and bondage in Egypt, God gave them parameters, laws, expectations through the law of Moses, right? He set the foundations, knowing years later, Jesus Christ would come and bring further explanation to the foundations that were already laid through Moses. And he did this because now they have a basic level of understanding. And he knew that when Jesus came, Jesus was going to reveal more spiritual wisdom based on the basic level that they had already began to understand. For example, one of the laws at that time was a tooth for a tooth and an eye for an eye. But then when Jesus came, he clarified that revenge is not the way. In the Old Testament, they understood the power of prayer and fasting. But in the New Testament, Jesus clarified that don't just pray and fast to look like a good Christian. It's about the heart posture. When Jesus came, he started talking more about what is your heart posture. He made it so we are no longer bound to the law, so that the law could truly be fulfilled through him. He was the ultimate sacrifice. But it took for him to release those foundations through the law of Moses for then Jesus to come and them to be ready for him. Even before Jesus came, he had prophets telling of the Messiah's coming. And so what I realized is God is all about the preparation. He's all about the processes. Even we see that in Genesis too. I talked about this before. Jesus didn't just put humans on earth without anything being there. He made the light within the darkness, day and night. He added the plants, he added the water, the fish, the animals. He did everything in the order of what he knew that thing would need. He didn't put the people before he put any plants or animals on there, because then what are we going to eat? He did everything in a particular order. He did everything in a particular order. God is very intentional. And so when we understand the intentionality of God and how strategic God is, why would he give you a promise without preparing your heart posture? Why would he give you a promise without preparing your character? If you want to become unrecognizable, you need to prepare the character. It needs to be an internal shift. It's not about looking like to everyone else you have it going on. It's about really have it going on within your heart. It's about really having it going on behind closed doors. And this is something even God is working with me on. There's a lot that he's just been revealing to me even this year that I just have so much I need to work on, and I didn't even realize it. But it's okay. That's what this journey is for. We're going to forever be learning. I want you to really sit and ask yourself, if God gave you what you've been asking for tomorrow, would you be ready for it? And if the answer is no, if you're really honest with yourself, and the answer is no, make a list of the shifts that need to take place. Because when Jesus is giving you a name change, when you first encounter him, he is speaking to a need for transformation. He is speaking to the you that he knows you're going to become through him, because he has seen what the end is. But you have to seek his face along the journey so he can transform you in being ready, so you can truly become that version of yourself that he knows you're capable of becoming. I think some good places to start, if you are someone doing this, is Proverbs. I love Proverbs. Proverbs just has so much wisdom. I've read Proverbs so many times, but Proverbs is a really good book to read when it comes to just basic principles of how you should live your life. If you're a woman, and you probably are because it's the Holy It Girl podcast, I recommend Proverbs 31. Great principles of a wife of noble character. So if you're someone who's waiting for marriage or that kingdom spouse, read Proverbs 31. What I found with reading Proverbs 31, I've realized that there's some things I need to work on, and don't mistake transformation for perfection. Like, you are just going to be perfect. Even with Proverbs, I look at it as something to strive to, and I use it as a checklist. Link below, I do have a Becoming Proverbs 31 guide, which helps you become the woman that God has called you to be and truly step into who you're destined to be, your full calling. I don't want you to think that you have to be perfect, but I think it's important to take note of, on that Proverbs 31 list, the things that you need to work on and work towards them. You don't have to be perfect. God knows that we are flawed, but are you working towards being a better you every day? Or do you have complacency? And I think a lot of us want God to bless our complacency, but God is going to only pour a miracle and a blessing into what we have the capacity for. And what the pastor talked about in New Year's is about systems. He's only going to bless the capacity of the systems that you placed in your life, whether that's a morning routine, whether that's your systems within your actual business. If you're a business owner, if you're looking for the job, do you have systems around applying for jobs when it comes to having someone look at your resume? How many jobs are you applying for on a daily basis to get that job? Are you following up after interviews? Whatever the process is, do you have a process for the thing that you're praying for? Because if God were to bless you, the blessing would become a curse if you are not ready for it. So we talked about Proverbs and Proverbs 31. Another book within the Bible that I think is great to read for just wisdom, and when you're talking about your character, is Galatians, when it talks about the fruits of the Spirit. I'm going to try to name all of them, but you have self-control, kindness, love, joy, peace. That's all I got so far, but y'all get the point. I think it's goodness. Anyway, I don't have it right here in front of me, but building those fruits of the Spirit within you. I know self-control and kindness was one that God really was working with me on this year. And yes, I'm a kind person, but what truly reveals characters. Who are you under pressure? Who are you when someone actually is rude to you? Who are you when someone hurts your feelings? Who are you when someone is frustrating you? So yes, I'm a kind person, but even the scriptures talk about it's easy to be kind to people that are kind to you and love those that love you. But you truly have the character of Jesus Christ if you can love those that are rude to you, or you can love those that have hurt you or wronged you. And so all these things are the things that God has been working in me. And as you speak to God on a daily basis, He's going to give you instruction. And as you follow His instruction, you are getting closer and closer to the promise. He is guiding the way. He is the light within the darkness. We are blind without Him. We are walking through life blind. We don't know what's going to happen. Even though everyone in the world tries to act like they know what they're doing, nobody really knows what they're doing. We are all figuring it out. We are all living life for the first time. And so God is our eyes. God is our eyes. He is the light within the darkness, guiding us through this thing of life. And so if you are following His instructions, He is going to make sure you get to the finish line. And this is where faith comes in. You don't have faith that God is going to give you this promise. You have faith in the person who gave the promise. You have faith in the fact that if God told me He is going to do this for my life, that it is going to happen, because He is not a man that shall lie, because He is faithful, because He makes good on His promises, because He is worthy to be trusted and to be praised. It's not about having faith in the thing coming to pass. It's about having faith in the one who gave the promise. And that's something else that God has really been talking to me about this year too. As well as another thing that I feel like He's really been talking to me about is changing my idea of what a blessing is. And I think that's also like a character shift that He's working in me, of not just seeing blessings as me acquiring something, as if I have to gain something for it to be a blessing, but looking at it to simply be a blessing to spread the word of God. Truly is a blessing to be a blessing. And honestly, the me 4 years ago when I started this walk with Christ didn't look at it like that at all. Blessings were only what is in it for me. Blessing was only about what's in it for me. And God has really moved me to a more selfless perspective, a more purpose-driven perspective, where it's not always about me. My suffering isn't all about me. And that changes everything as well. It's like, my suffering isn't all about me. There's someone that God is going to want me to disciple later, or to lead or mentor later, that is going to be going through the same thing I went through. So when I make it on the other side, one, God is going to get the glory, because they're going to hear His name all throughout my mouth. But two, my struggles are someone else's survival guide. Your struggles are someone else's survival guide. So as you go through the trials with God, the lessons and wisdom that you learn, it's a blessing for you to pass that down to someone else. It's a blessing to encourage someone else's faith, because I've been here. I've been through that. So girl, you're going to get through it. But this is how I did it. It's a blessing to be a blessing. It's a blessing to be used by God. So shifting my mindset on what is a blessing. Like, it is a blessing when I get things too, but that's not the only form of a blessing. So tonight, I want you to ask God to stretch your capacity, and then to give you the resources necessary to overcome the challenges that come with the stretching. Ask Him to send people in your life that encourage and support you along the way, as well as ask God for this year, ask God to show you the gifts that He placed on the inside of you. Ask Him to help you see yourself the way that He sees you. Because if Jesus is changing your name, you have to see it. You have to have the faith that you can become it. Okay, that wraps up this podcast episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I gave y'all a lot to think about as you go into this new year. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Bye.